The faith is growing. Could revival be on the cusp? And also, this is the last episode of the Common Sense Crusade for a while. This show has been going on for some time now, and we've been very blessed with this platform to highlight the good news and to expose the bad news in the Christian sense of the word. And so, we'll be putting this show on a hiatus until I get back to Britain, at which point we'll pick it back up again from the Lotus Eaters as if we never left. But for now, I have one slot left. I have one guest invitation remaining, and there are only two possible people that it could have been. I wanted to get them both on. Emma Webb is, of course, my first guest from the Common Sense Crusade. Was on my panel throughout when it was on in the TV days. She is writing a PhD. She could not be with us, but I'm so blessed that the other person is with us and could be with us. Paul Sapper was my producer throughout the entirety of the Common Sense Crusade, including the Christmas and Easter specials. Put more work into the Common Sense Crusade than anybody else. Paul Sapper is with us now from ADF. How you doing, Paul?
Really well, Calvin. Thank you so much for having me on.
Not at all. It's a genuine privilege. Before we get to the news topic in the story, we've got a post up on screen. Here was your first appearance. So for people that don't know, Paul was literally behind the scenes the whole time, like coming up with guests, coming up with stories, like bouncing ideas around. It's good to have a Christian on your team when you're trying to do a Christian show, right? And Paul was the Christian on our team. And so we batted ideas around about what's important to discuss and why. And this was his first appearance on screen. So Paul shifted from producing to being a commentator himself. And this was March 28th, 2024. So you've been doing this for a year now, over a year now.
Yeah, that's
And
right near the time that I joined ADF initially. So it's great to be back again, and it was such immense fun and a privilege to be able to work with you when we were working on TV. I think we both agree and feel quite strongly that having a Christian witness in the media is very important because just speaking the truth in that forum, it can help lead people to Christ. And if you're a Christian, you think that's incredibly important. So I'm very grateful to you for having had the opportunity to work with you on that. And you're very kind, far too kind about what I was doing at that time, but I very much enjoyed it and I'm grateful for it.
one day, Paul, you and I are going to write a book on our time, on our time building that show. But for now, you've got some good news for us. So you've discovered that there's growth in Christianity in Britain, particularly amongst Gen Z. Now, we've been kind of speculating this for a while, but there's some hard data out there now that shows that Gen Z is coming to the faith.
Yeah, it really is quite encouraging. It's still quite early days, obviously, but there is promising data out there. So this article in the Express, which you have up recently, they interviewed Cardinal Nichols and the Anglican Archbishop of York about why more and more young people are converting to Christianity and are finding meaning in that. And there's some data that they're reporting on, which shows that since 2018, the number of Gen Z people, the percentage who regularly attend church, I think that's defined as at least once a month, has gone from 4% to 16%. So that's obviously a huge increase. And there's a lot of young men who are driving that as well, I think, but also young women. And so I think you've got the data on that hand. You've also got a lot of anecdotal evidence where if you go to a lot of churches around the country, here in England, you will see a lot more young people than you might otherwise have thought and would have seen perhaps 10 or 20 years ago. And so there definitely is something going on. I think the study itself is called a quiet revival.
Hmm.
It's really taken a lot of people by surprise because the spirit of the age is very much Christianity was very much the old news, and the culture seems to have a lot of people would say moved on beyond that. But I think what we're seeing now is young people actually are seeing that there's something valuable there, and they are converting. And so I think Cardinal Nichols and the Anglican Archbishop of York spoke I think, very well in this article about why that might be the case. Um, yeah, I think the spirit of the age, you could say maybe secular liberalism, materialism. Young people have lived more in that and were brought up in it, perhaps more than any other generation in human history. And I think what they've found after having lived it and lived as if the good life comes from just satisfying your desires, they found an immense emptiness there. I think in many ways you could say Gen Z is a generation which in some ways was characterized by unhappiness. So having experienced that, I think they've said this is empty and it's not giving my life meaning. And so they're seeing what else is there out there in terms of what the good life is. And they're finding that in the Christian tradition, there's a very different message. And they're finding that when they're going to church, when they're reading the Bible, when they're turning to Christ, they're finding the meaning in their lives and they're able to flourish in a way that they weren't able to before. And I think the fact that more and more young people are finding that because they're kind of pushed away from the darkness of the world, which is increasingly dark, I think is a silver lining that young people, are turning away from that and are coming to Christ.
Absolutely. There's only so long you can go along with this secular idea that you've got to chase individual goals, and whether it's monetary or materialistic, it doesn't matter. It is empty, it is soulless, and it is the culture of death. And so it's great to see there's some element of it being turned around. Bible sales have doubled in the last 5 years. That's a prime example of this quiet revival that the report goes into. It's important to share these things because people do feel like the UK in particular is going through a dark period, and people need some good news to latch onto. The good news is always there, but it's good. It's important to know that people are looking for the faith. People are looking for Jesus Christ again. Um, Anecdotally, I know you're a part of a couple of church communities in London. Are you seeing Generation Z coming to church?
Yeah, I mean, I live in a community house of young Catholics. There's 15 of us here.
Yeah.
And I think, in my experience, most of the young Catholics I meet, and basically most of them are either converts or reverts. So they came back to the faith later on in life. So I think you are seeing a lot of that. And then also something that I've done the last couple of years is called the Chartres pilgrimage. It's a Catholic pilgrimage from in France where you walk from Paris to Chartres, about 70 miles over 3 days. And that just keeps increasing every year as well. And so this year there was 19,000 people there, and the average age was 20 years old. Last year there was 18,000 people, and the capacity there is it's being sold out. They're selling it out every year recently, and so that shows a real hunger for it and a real hunger for this is a traditional Catholic pilgrimage I'm talking about, so it's a really authentic, traditional expression of the faith, which in many ways is the most far removed from the sort of secular world that as you can get. And I think that's deliberate. There's a reason for that. It's because people want something different from what the world is offering, because the message that the world is offering just does not fulfill. And so they're looking for the truth, and they're finding that in an authentic expression of Christianity, in the truth that's proclaimed shamelessly, the truth that's proclaimed as the truth. And so I think, yeah, you see it anecdotally in church, you see more and more young people in my parish that I go to, there are a lot of young people there. And then you're seeing it with events, pilgrimages like the Chartres pilgrimage, which are just increasing year on year. Um, there's an interesting thing going on that while you're seeing this, it seems like there's a discrepancy going on between how our elites believe in their worldview and what young people are increasingly moving towards. Whereas the elite worldview is very much increasingly anti-Christian, I think, to the point where peaceful Christian expression is even targeted in the United Kingdom. So my organization, we supported our buffer zone clients who've been convicted for silently praying or offering consensual conversation in abortion center buffer zones. So that's a real crackdown on peaceful Christian expression. So you see our elites doubling down on that. You'll see concerns around online censorship. You've seen that in the UK with the Online Safety Act, and in the EU with the Digital Services Act. So elites have their consensus, their worldview, and they're cracking down with more and more vigor against dissent, essentially, in various forms. But at the same time, you see young people are moving away from that and are coming to a very different point of view. And so I think that discrepancy that we're seeing is very much a reality. But young people are really not buying what elites are selling a lot of the time now. So I think that is a trend that we're seeing there as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned people are looking for an authentic expression of the faith. Now, in the news also this week, there is the first, in the Anglican Communion, there is the first woman primate in Britain, the first openly homosexual bishop in Britain with this new Candy, I've forgotten her surname. But anyway, this Archbishop Candy is a lady, active homosexual in a civil partnership, lives with a civil partner, has just been promoted to the Archbishop of the Church in Wales, which shows that the Church in Wales is now apostate, chasing the times. The Church of England has no Archbishop at the moment, but they're trying to search for another one. I suspect it probably will be a woman, but the Church of England constantly chases the times. Um, in Britain, there's nothing more countercultural than the Catholic faith. There's only one authentic expression of the faith, which is the Catholic Church. But it is very, there is an anti-English element to it, a hurdle that a lot of people have to overcome. If people are entirely unfamiliar with Catholicism, especially Generation Z who haven't been taught about it, what would you say is the best approach for them to A, find out more, and or B, to experience what Catholicism is all about?
So I would say, obviously, just to preface it, ADF International isn't a Catholic organization, but I
Sure,
myself
but
am a
as
Roman
Paul Safran.
Catholic, and that's important to me as a Catholic that uh, people can just go to a Catholic church, Roman Catholic church, to go to mass. Particularly, I go to a traditional Latin mass, so you can go to a Latin mass parish, and you can find community there, and you can experience the beauty of the liturgy. And I think something that Cardinal Nichols spoke about in this article is that a lot of things that young people are seeing as well is just beauty, and they're struck by that beauty. And the traditional Catholic liturgy, I think, is just really imbued with that beauty in the chanting, the singing, the incense, uh, and the whole liturgy is ordered towards worshiping God and giving Him glory. And I think that experience of transcendent beauty is something that is so difficult to find in the world increasingly. We look around and the buildings are ugly, just things that sort of beauty that we see in the church is so hard to find elsewhere increasingly. I think that can really strike people as well. We know that the transcendental values exist, beauty, truth, and goodness, and that they come from God. And I think that's another way that people can come to the truth and come to faith is through experiencing those transcendentals. And you raise a very good point there as well, that when Christians try and chase the times and compromise on traditional Christian teaching, they'll often find empty churches as a result. It does not work because if you're going to try and chase the world, why would someone go to you rather than the world? What we see, I think, the two places that I've noticed anecdotally see more and more young people are in traditional Catholic parishes, where there's no kind of emphasis put on compromising with the world whatsoever. It's just about pursuing the truth and worshiping God. And in evangelical churches, you see a lot of young people as well because they don't compromise on difficult teachings like being pro-life and being in favor of God's plan for sexuality and marriage. And if you are just going to preach the truth and talk about the truth and not compromise, not seek to chase the times, that will attract young people. That will attract people because the truth doesn't go out of fashion. It's an undefeated champ, and people are craving for that. They're hungry for it. And I think if we can see that as well. I think when did this whole process start? Because I think it's even increased since we worked on our show together on TV. I feel like the dial has shifted even since then. And if we're to look at things which shifted it, I think Jordan Peterson was a big part of it. He was teaching a very countercultural message that young people should take on responsibility, and that's where meaning comes from. And actually, there's immense meaning in these stories. Uh, and then also, I think COVID had a big part of it, where that was in many ways like materialism to its extreme, where people were told, shut yourselves up in your house, don't need to go to church, you can do your work from home. So from a material point of view, all your material needs were met, but none of your spiritual needs were met.
Mm.
And you didn't have that human connection, which we know is necessary for flourishing. And so I think from those two things, people were coming away and thinking there has to be more to life than this, essentially. And that's something that was spoken about by Cardinal Nichols and the Archbishop of York in this article, that people are looking for something deeper and they're finding that in Christ.
Yeah, I get a lot of messages from people who are saying, look, my local parish church is a Church of England church with a blue-haired lesbian vicar who's preaching about climate change, Black Lives Matter, and the latest political fad from a left-wing perspective. Where can I go and find good, solid biblical teaching? And they're always nervous about going to their local Catholic church, which was why I asked you, because I personally believe the best approach is just turn up, right? You may not
Yeah,
know what's going on,
I totally agree.
but I think Paul's advice was spot on. Look for a traditional Catholic parish. So look for the traditional Latin Mass. There may be one in your area. If there is, this is the ancient liturgy that goes all the way back to the apostles. This is the faith as it was delivered once and for all to the saints. And so that connection is what makes us Christian, not just connection to other Christians in the here and now, but to the Christians who have been and come before us, and that is the communion of saints. And Paul's right. There are some good evangelical churches out there that are uncompromising too, but we are a faith of word and sacrament. So please, if you can, find a traditional Catholic parish near you. There is plenty of them to go around in Britain. So I'm very pleased to hear Generation Z is coming back to their faith. I'm very pleased to hear there's a quiet revival. I personally think it's the only way to turn England around. And the reason I'm emphasizing, I'm not a Roman Catholic myself, but the reason I'm emphasizing Catholicism is because I genuinely believe that it's the only way to save England if England returns to the Catholic faith. And I know it's not the ADF line, but what's the Paul Sapper line on that? Just to wrap up.
Well, one of my favorite authors, I think we spoke about him before, is Hilaire Belloc, and he spoke about how Europe will return to the faith or she will perish. And I think that is true. Uh, there was a paper written by James Mumford for the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship about universal human rights in Christianity. And he was laying out in that paper how the concept of universal human rights came from Christianity. There was no universal human dignity in the pagan world. There was very much a hierarchical notion of human worth, where some people had worth and then slaves didn't. And then if you didn't want your child, they would be left out for exposure. So they didn't have worth if they weren't wanted. In the Colosseums, people would fight to the death. And so they didn't have worth in the same way either. But then Christians came along and they said, actually, no, what reality is different. God created every single person in his image and likeness, and they all have dignity, and our rights authentically flow from that. And so that was a really radical moment in European history and world history. And that led to societies being built and ordered on that truth. And that's what led to flourishing in the West. It came from that recognition that every single person is created in the image and likeness of God. And unfortunately, what we've had in recent years and decades, as we've moved away from the Christian worldview, is the return of a hierarchical notion of human worth, where human worth is defined on not just being a human being created in the image and likeness of God, but on something like arbitrary, like choice. And so if you can't exercise rational choice, for example, if you're an unborn child, then you don't have worth. And so abortion, these people would say, is okay. Whereas Christians know that's not the case. Every single person has human worth. Every single person has rights. And the only way we'll have flourishing as a society is if we return to the truth that every single person has human dignity and if we order society on that basis.
Amen. Paul Sapper, where can people find you?
So you can look up a lot of ADF's work, all of our work that we're working on in the UK and around the world on our website, ADF International. And I occasionally am writing as well, so you can Google me and see what I've been writing on. And yeah, I just want to thank you again, Calvin, so much for having me on today,
Not at all.
and just for everything. You've been a huge inspiration for me. Your
Thanks.
brave Christian witness in the public square has really inspired me and has made me want to really inspired me to want to do more of the work that I am doing. So thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, brother. God bless you.
Thank you for watching my Common Sense Crusade. If you'd like to watch the whole show, you can subscribe to lotuseaters.com for as little as £5 per month, and then you get access to a bank of content as well. My show is 3 p.m. every Thursday. See you there. Deus Vult.